Imagine a princess, daughter of the King of Israel, and to think that this would bring you a life full of security and happiness. This could have been the fate of Merab, the eldest daughter of King Saul. However, what should have been a life of honor and stability turned into one of the most tragic stories in the Bible. Merab faced not only the responsibility of her title, but also the shadow of a father disturbed and consumed by envy, anger, and ambition. The promise of marrying one of the greatest heroes of Israel, the young David, also became a plan to destroy him. But Merab's cruel fate was even darker. And in this video, you are about to discover a story marked by betrayals, losses, and unimaginable pain. A mother who ended up losing her 5 sons. Prepare yourself to learn the tragic story of Merab in the Bible. Many women in the Bible lived very difficult stories, and Merab was one of them. Merab was the eldest daughter of King Saul, and at first glance it seemed she would have a peaceful and secure life. After all, she was a princess of Israel. But in reality, things were quite different. At that time, it was common for princesses to be involved in political marriages to benefit the kingdom. In Merab's case, her situation was even more complicated because her father, Saul, eventually lost control of his mind. Even after his death, Saul's choices and actions brought Merab deep pain, perhaps the greatest of her life. The exact meaning of the name Merab remains uncertain, but some scholars suggest it may be related to the idea of provided a leader or elevation, a title that may have reflected her parents' hope for her to hold a prominent or leading role. However, the Bible provides few specific details about Merab as a person, leading most interpreters to piece together what is known about her family context. Merab's mother was likely Ahinoam, mentioned as one of King Saul's wives. Merab also had a younger sister, Michal, who, unlike her, played a more detailed role in Scripture, especially in her relationship with David, the future king of Israel. The Bible tells us that after David defeated the giant Goliath, he became very popular in Israel. At first, King Saul gave David a prominent position in his army, but over time, he began to feel jealous of David and pursued him. Saul recognized that David's success came from the fact that God was with him, and this stirred even more fear, as the tribes of northern Israel and Judah loved David, making Saul fearful of him. Before all this, however, Saul had already promised to give his daughter in marriage to the man who would face and defeat Goliath, the great warrior of the Philistines. In the story of Goliath's challenge to Israel, the Bible tells us that, upon seeing the giant, the Israelites were terrified and fled. Among themselves they said, "Did you see that man? He came to challenge Israel. The king has promised great wealth to whoever defeats him, as well as his daughter in marriage and exemption for that man's family from taxes in Israel." Then David asked the soldiers nearby, "What will be given to the man who kills this Philistine and defends the honor of Israel? Who is this Philistine, who is not even part of our people, to challenge the armies of the living God?" The soldiers repeated to David the promised reward. And as we know, it was David who, with God's help, defeated Goliath and freed Israel from that humiliation. Moreover, Saul wanted to use the promise of giving his daughter in marriage to David, not only to bring him into his family, but also to create a situation where David might be killed in battle. By this time, Saul was already showing signs of being out of control. He then promised his eldest daughter, Merab, to David, but with one condition. Saul said, "Here is my daughter Merab. I will give her to you as a wife. Just be courageous and fight the Lord's battles." But deep down, Saul thought, "I won't kill him myself. I'll let the Philistines do it." By imposing the condition that David fight in the Lord's battles, Saul had a hidden intention. He hoped David would die in combat against the Philistines. For Saul, this would solve the problem without him having to take David's life directly, as David was becoming a threat to his throne due to his success and popularity among the people. Saul believed that by sending David to the front lines in constant battles, he would increase the chances that the Philistines would end David's life. When David received the marriage proposal with Merab, he responded humbly. David declared that he was not worthy of marrying a princess of Israel, showing respect for the social position Merab held. For him, being the king's son-in-law was an immense honor, but he did not see himself as having the qualifications or social status for it. This attitude of humility strongly contrasted with the insecurity and jealousy consuming Saul's heart. However, when the time came for the marriage, Saul did not keep his promise and without explanation gave Merab as a wife to Adriel, the Maholathite, a man who was probably from the region of Meholah and son of Barzillai. This unexpected change was a blow to David's trust and perhaps a disappointment to Merab, although the biblical text does not reveal her reaction. Saul's decision to marry Merab to Adriel raises questions about his true intentions and further demonstrates his unpredictability. Some commentators suggest that Saul's change regarding Merab's marriage to David may have been motivated by David's humble attitude, as he did not consider himself worthy of being the king's son-in-law. For David, a shepherd who had recently become a warrior, the idea of joining the royal family seemed far too grand. Other scholars, however, believe that this abrupt change by Saul was a reflection of his disturbed mental state. By this point, Saul was already showing signs of profound emotional instability, tormented by a spirit of jealousy, hatred, and resentment that consumed his relationship with David. With each victory and success of David, Saul saw his own position threatened, and instead of recognizing God's favor upon David, the king began to view him as a dangerous rival. The change in plans regarding Merab's marriage to David seems to have been yet another attempt to manipulate and control David's fate. For Saul, the best way to keep David under control was through alliances that could simultaneously place him in dangerous situations. However, by giving Merab to Adriel instead of David, Saul broke his initial promise and once again demonstrated his lack of loyalty. When David finally married Merab's younger sister, Michal, Saul saw another opportunity to eliminate his rival. Although Michal truly loved David, Saul planned to use the marriage as a trap, sending David on dangerous missions in the hope that the Philistines would kill him. For Saul, this strategy would allow David to be eliminated without him having to dirty his hands. But once again, his plans failed. David continued to survive and gain popularity. Later, when Saul became a declared enemy of David, he made the decision to undo David's marriage to Michal, despite the love she felt for him. Saul took Michal away from David and gave her in marriage to another man. This action, beyond demonstrating Saul's desire to hurt David emotionally, was a deep blow to Michal, who was forced to abandon her true love and live with another man. This series of manipulations and frustrated attempts to control David's fate only shows how consumed Saul was by jealousy and bitterness, which would ultimately isolate him even more from his people and from God. After the events in which Saul tried to manipulate his daughter's marriages to harm David, the Bible does not provide many details about Merab's life after her marriage to Adriel. We do not know how her relationship with him was, her family life, or the difficulties she faced. The only additional information is the mention that Merab and Adriel had at least 5 children, a significant number, especially considering the family responsibilities and complex political relations of the time. But unfortunately, the fate of these children would be marked by profound tragedy. Years later, during the reign of David, a terrible drought struck Israel for 3 consecutive years, which was seen as a sign that something was wrong between the people and God. David sought an answer and was informed that the crisis was a direct consequence of a grave violation committed by Saul. He had betrayed an ancient peace agreement between the Israelites and the Gibeonites. Although the Gibeonites had been protected by a treaty since the days of Joshua, Saul, in his zeal for the purity of the Israelite people, attacked and killed many of them, breaking the oath of protection that Israel had promised to this people. To resolve the situation, David approached the Gibeonites and asked what could be done to atone for Saul's wrongdoing and end the drought that plagued Israel. The Gibeonites, bitter over the injustice they had suffered, refused any form of payment in silver or gold and demanded something much more painful: the death of 7 descendants of Saul. David then agreed to this difficult decision, selecting the descendants who would be delivered, and among them were the 5 sons of Merab with Adriel, as well as the 2 sons of Rizpah, Saul's concubine. This episode likely marked the most painful moment in Merab's life. Seeing her sons sacrificed for revenge, motivated by her father, Saul's actions, must have been devastating. Merab's 5 sons and Rizpah's 2 sons were handed over to the Gibeonites, who executed them as an act of symbolic reparation. The bodies of the 7 men were left publicly exposed, a fate that, in the culture of that time, was a great dishonor, as it meant they did not receive a proper burial, something essential for the rest of their souls, according to tradition. It was in this desolate scenario that Rizpah, mother of 2 of the executed, took a remarkable stance. She stayed beside the bodies day and night for months, protecting them from wild animals and birds of prey. Armed with a sackcloth, she kept a constant vigil, refusing to allow the bodies to be further desecrated. Rizpah's devotion to her sons, even after death, captured everyone's attention and became a symbolic act of maternal love and dignity, moving King David himself. David, moved by Rizpah's persistence and grief, decided after months to honor the bodies of the 7 men. He ordered that their remains, including those of Merab's sons, be removed from the place where they had been exposed and provided them with a proper burial alongside the remains of Saul and Jonathan. This final gesture allowed that even after a series of dishonors and tragedies, Saul's descendants received a more honorable end. The story of these events echoes to this day, reminding us of the profound and lasting consequences of acts of injustice and the chains of pain that can cross generations. After this devastating tragedy, the Bible does not record anything further about Merab, leaving her story shrouded in mystery and silence. We do not know how she dealt with the brutal loss of her sons or how her life was with Adriel after these events. One can imagine that the weight of this tragedy marked her days deeply, for losing 5 sons in such a cruel and public way, especially due to the mistakes of her father, Saul, would have been an unbearable pain for any mother. The silence of Scripture regarding Merab may reflect the culture of the time, where women, especially those outside the central narratives, rarely had their voices or emotions recorded. Nevertheless, Merab remains a tragic figure in Israel's history, remembered mainly for her vulnerable position amidst the political and religious conflicts of her time. Merab's pain may have been similar to that of other biblical mothers who lost their children, reflecting a dimension of suffering and sacrifice that, though not detailed, resonates across generations. We do not know if she was supported or comforted by anyone from her family or community, or if she was left to face grief and desolation alone. However, it is possible that Merab found some solace in the faith and traditions of her people, practices that often served as sustenance for individuals during times of great suffering. Thus, Merab's story's end reminds us of the many women whose lives are marked by silent sacrifices and losses, remaining in the shadows of the great biblical narratives, yet representing in their pain and resilience the struggle and invisible strength of countless women in the sacred history of Israel. Now write in the comments if you already knew the story of Merab in the Bible, share this lesson with others, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos. May God bless you.